What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking at Shadow Charizard in the Open Great League, where today we're pairing it with Alolan Sandslash and Claydol. And this is a team that I featured in my top teams video and I wanted to take a look at because Shadow Charizard with Dragon Breath, Air Cutter, and Blast Burn looks absolutely incredible in the one-shot scenario against the rest of the meta apparently in the Sims. So I wanted to take a look at it today. Before we hop into the battles, I want to say a special thank you to the expert trainer members on this channel, Benny Hemlock, Dr. Reen Mustache, Sohan Patil, and Eliana, as well as the legend trainer members on this channel, Big Burden, Andrew Pitton, Musachu, Noodleman, Speedster, Liminal Lagamore, Tom Spencer, Fast Idiot Boss, Jamie Finn, and CD Slaskus. So without further ado, let's hop into some battles. Alright, into the first match, we've got Sandslash into Regidrago. So this is a fantastic lead. Where is the opponent going to go here? They're going to switch into a Corviknight. Now, I was a little slow on the swap, and this is actually a losing matchup for the Sandslash. However, at this point, yeah, actually, I'm just going to chip with the Sandslash and then come in with my Charizard. I believe I can survive a payback, just barely, so I will let it go, and I do. I live in the red health range. The opponent does actually full send. They don't beta Charizard, which is pretty rare to be honest. But now I'm going to full send the Blast Burn. That picks up the knockout on the Corviknight. They didn't really have an ability to sand attack down. And now in comes an Empoleon in the back. Can I get to the move? No, I cannot. Not even able to get to an Air Cutter, which is a little bit unfortunate, but in comes Claydol. And Claydol is basically just going to wrap up this game, because once I get the full farm down of this Empoleon, no matter how many shields I need to commit, that this game is over. And they know that, so they have to pivot out of that matchup. Back in comes the Regidrago, but this Regidrago is completely walled. Breaking Swipe and their Dragon Energy are resisted. And because I'm running the non-shadow, we can survive these moves a little bit more comfortably. I'm also able to get to the back-to-back ice punches, and once I grab this final shield, this game should be over. But no, the opponent lets that go. They know they need to survive it, and they're trying to get a farm down, but they just can't quite get there. But at this point, they are in Mud Slap farm down range, so I will let this go. Dragon Energy does pick up the knockout. Back in comes a Claydol. They get one final move, but no matter what it is, I know I can live it, and I will save my shield for that Hydro Cannon. It is the Dragon Energy. Back in comes the Empoleon. I will at least lower their attacks so that their Metal Claws don't add up quite as much. And now I will just look for the full Mud Slap farm down. The opponent just can't get to two moves. So we get the Mud Slap farm down and we are able to take that win. Into next match, we've got Sandslash into Corviknight once again. So yes, this team is like a little bit soft to Corviknight, but in the grand scheme of things, not really. They have to full send paybacks in this matchup, which costs a lot of energy. Even Claydol doesn't have a bad matchup into Corviknight. All of them are pretty neutral, but in comes a Swampert. And I, of course, do not have an answer to a Swampert up energy in the back, but I do grab a shield from the opponent. So instead, I'm going to come in with my Claydol. I know I can survive one Hydro Cannon, so I will just let the first one go, and then I probably will just shield the next. And honestly, yeah, they throw an alignment, so definitely going to shield this. I get the free Mud Slap in, and now I can potentially lower my opponent's attack. Going for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb from this range will be enough to pick up the knockout if they let it go. And if they commit the shield, they will be very, very low. But in comes the Corviknight. Corviknight gets the full farm down with the sand attacks. Where do I go from here? Do I go Sandslash or do I go Charizard? I decide the Sandslash, force him to throw some energy. Is this enough for the payback? I'm not sure. I wasn't really counting. They only throw an Air Cutter, so definitely can survive that very comfortably. Now here comes an Ice Punch. This is still neutral chip, and if they let this go, I wouldn't be surprised, yeah, if I just stay in, force them to throw some energy, and then pivot into my Charizard. They full send the payback. Now in comes the Charizard. Gonna look for the full farm down. It is a Gastrodon in the back, and look at these Mud Slaps. These are resisted Mud Slaps, but they've already done a quarter of our health. This is absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to have to shield absolutely everything in this matchup because these Mud Slaps have put me in Body Slam range, and Body Slam did receive a buff this season. So I really just have to hope that I can get to two Air Cutters before my opponent is able to make it to back-to-back Body Slams. They're one away, and we get there. It looks like it would have been on the CMP tab, but my opponent may have over-farmed, allowing me to get the Air Cutter to pick up the knockout, and now it's a race. Charizard versus the Corviknight, but it does not matter. We get the Dragon Breath farm down, and we are able to take that win. Another Corviknight on the lead. No surprise that we're seeing Corviknight absolutely everywhere given its recent community day, and it is the new #1 ranked Pokemon. However, this opponent doesn't even farm up to the payback. They only go for an air cutter, so I will just let that go. I guess they just want to boost their sand attacks because these sand attacks are super effective and they will add up, but so are these Shadow Claws. They're neutral damage, so we've got them pretty much into the same health range, and our pacing is pretty similar. So I'm just going to go for another Ice Punch. That puts the opponent into the red. And at this point, Sand Slash has done its job. So I will just let it go. Look for a farm down with either of my back two Pokemon, because having an energy lead on either of them is going to be good for me. So just going to let the Sand Slash go. They end up baiting with the Air Cutter, so they're forced to go for back-to-back Air Cutters. They get another boost, but in comes the Claydol. Claydol able to get the full Mud Slap farm down. And what's in the back? It is a Quagsire. So Quagsire will be hit now with the Ice Beam. And Ice Beam is neutral damage if they do not respect it, but they do end up committing the shield. Pretty risky against a Claydol because Claydol does have access to Rock Tomb. I will commit the shield on one because I know I can survive one, but they're nearly at the back-to-back. Here comes the second one. I will just let the second one go because I need to at least save one shield for my Shadow Charizard, especially if it doesn't have a huge advantage. But now I'm just going to go for the Rock Tomb. I'm expecting my opponent to double shield the Quagsire, and they do. And now in comes the Charizard. What's in the back? It's a Dedenne, but Dedenne just too slow on the switch. Allows me to get to the Blast Burn on the CMP tie. We win the CMP tie. Blast Burn one-shots the Dedenne. Back in comes the Quagsire, but Quagsire is going to get outpaced to the back-to-back charge moves. In comes the Air Cutter, and Air Cutter from this range picks up the knockout on the Quagsire, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match. Great lead. They've got Drill Run, actually, and they've got better pacing with Poison Sting, but they instead pivot into an Azumarill, and that is a bit of an interesting switch because Azumarill, of course, is completely walled charge moves wise unless they're running Hydro Pump. Now they could be running it. They do actually farm up to it, so this could be a potential Hydro, but I'm calling the bait. No way you're running Hydro, and it is just the play rough, so that is good. And now I can go for the Drill Run. Drill Run will put the opponent into the red health range, but it's not going to be enough to pick up the knockout, and it actually looks like my opponent might be able to pick up a knockout with a play rough here. However, I will just let this go. Not enough to pick up the knockout, able to get to a Drill Run as well, and that is the benefit of the non-shadow, being able to survive two play roughs and pick up the knockout with a Drill Run. In comes the Beedrill, but now I can just land my Charizard here where they're completely walled. In comes a Girafarig. Girafarig will be hit with the Air Cutter. Girafarig is so glassy that they have to shield virtually everything. And now I'm going to throw a few more Dragon Breaths, go for the Psychic Fangs catch onto my Claydol. I'm unsuccessful, but that's okay. Now they're going to go for a Trailblaze to boost. No, they're not. They're going to go for a Resisted Psychic Fangs instead. I will respect this Trailblaze now because my defense is lowered, but then I will just look for the full farm down. They instead go for another Psychic Fangs. Does that allow them to attempt their charge move? It does not. That is absolutely huge. In comes the Beedrill. Beedrill now will be hit with a super effective Rock Tomb, permanently lowering their attack. The opponent lets that go, but yeah, they just don't have enough shields in play to win this match, so they will resign the match. Into the next match, we've got Sandslash into Annihilate. Now, this is a terrible lead, but we've got two better answers in the back. So in comes a Claydol, and we lure out a Cradily. Now, this is a nice thing to bait out because Cradily, of course, has double super effective Rock Tomb for the Charizard, and it is completely walled by the Sandslash. But baiting it out with a Mud Slapper with coverage with Ice Beam allows us to actually grab a shield in this mid game, which is absolutely massive. The opponent did, of course, go for the Grass Knot, so my attack was not lowered, which means they did feel like they had to respect the Ice Beam. And now Grass Knot does pick up the knockout, but in comes the Sandslash. They instead pivot back into their Annihilate. Annihilate will get to one charge move here, which I will respect, but I'm not going to let them get to a second charge move, so I'm going to overfarm a little bit here, and now go for the Air Cutter to pick up the knockout before they're able to make it to a second Rage Fist. And Air Cutter from this range easily picks up the knockout on the Annihilate. Where do they go from here? Do they come back in with a Cradily, or do they come in with their third? Instead, they come in with their third. It's a Dedenne in the back. I'm full sending, no baits here. The opponent's only win con is calling a bait. They try and call it. We get the Blast Burn. That connects. Back in comes the Cradily, and Cradily now will be met with the Air Cutter, which will grab the final shield from the opponent. In comes the Sandslash, and Sandslash has super effective Ice Punch here. Of course, Rock Tomb is neutral, so I will respect it. But now here comes the Ice Punch. This is super effective damage, and despite the lowering of the attack, is enough to pick up the knockout on the Cradily, and we are able to take that win. Into the next match, we've got Sandslash into Stunfisk. So this is actually a decent lead. just because we have a pacing advantage. Yes, their fast move is super effective, but Stunfisk is very slow this season, and yes, I did showcase it in my previous video, and I think it is very, very strong. But this is a matchup where if we get the shield call correct, we should be able to win it. So I'm going to shield the first. It is the full send of the Earthquake. That is absolutely massive. And now what that means is I can farm up to the back-to-back Ice Punches before they get to Earthquake number 2, which is absolutely huge because that means my opponent cannot win the one shield scenario. They try and go for it, but here comes back-to-back Ice Punches, winning the CMP tie. The opponent commits both shields, so at this point, I will just let this go, look for a farm down, because I have a feeling that coverage with Claydol will be good into anything in the back. It is a Altaria in the back, so here come the super effective Dragon Breaths from the Charizard. I will respect any one charge move here. It is going to be the Sky Attack coming through. I'm now going to go for the Air Cutter because I know this will do some solid chip, and it will put it into Dragon Breath farm down range, especially if we get the boost, so that is absolutely huge. Look for the full farm down. We get the full farm down. If the Stunfisk comes back in, I can overfarm because they're not quite at the charge move, and I just have to watch for the catch. They try and go for the catch. They have a Dodrio in the back, unable to get the full farm down, which is fine because now I can connect with the Air Cutter to pick up the knockout. And now here comes a boosted Blast Burn. We're only 1 times boosted, but Dodrio is very glassy. Blast Burn easily picks up the knockout, and we get a 1v3 sweep with the Shadow Charizard. Into the next match. Tough lead. We've got Empoleon, so just gonna have to play out this matchup. Just gonna play it out to the point where the opponent tries to go for a catch onto Talonflame, maybe a catch and a sneak of the Incinerate, but interesting play there because in comes the Claydol. I should have come in with my Charizard here, but I just wasn't expecting a direct Talonflame safe switch, and I think I was anticipating maybe a Charizard instead, but either way, we grab a shield in that mid game, and now we can just come in with a Charizard, look for a Dragon Breath farm down. No, the opponent is not going to let that happen. Back in comes the Empoleon. Empoleon has a lot of energy here, so I'm going to have to start committing the shields. And I'm going to look to overfarm, allow them to grab 2 shields from me, and then overfarm as much as possible. Look to pick up the knockout with a Blast Burn, and then I have loads of energy on my Sandslash as well, and on my Charizard, that the opponent can't really commit a shield here. So the opponent does end up letting that go. What's in the back? It's a Venusaur, so going to overfarm as much as possible. Now going for the Blast Burn right before they get to the Sludge, and Blast Burn is going to easily one-shot, so they're forced to commit the shield. In comes the Sandslash. I don't throw right away because I want to try and farm 2 back-to-back charge moves. They go for a double resisted Sludge Bomb. In comes the Talonflame. Of course, they're forced to throw energy because I have a lot of energy here, but they go for the Flame Charge. That picks up the knockout, but now back in comes the Charizard. Charizard once again looking for the 1v3 sweep. Air Cutter picks up the knockout on the Talonflame. Can we outpace the Venusaur? Yes, we can, because they threw energy, and now here comes an Air Cutter. Air Cutter is super effective damage. It picks up the knockout on the Venusaur, and once again Charizard with the 1v3 sweep. Into the next match, we've got Sandslash into Cradily. So this is a fantastic matchup. The opponent is going to safe switch into a Typhlosion, and in comes the Claydol. Now Claydol, of course, will have to respect a Blast Burn here, as that will do massive neutral damage. And even though Claydol is very bulky, we would just barely survive that, I would imagine. We do get the full farm down, and now in comes Cradily. Cradily will be met with a super effective Ice Beam, and this is why the coverage on Claydol is so nice. They end up letting that go, and at that point, the opponent just resigned the match, so we are able to take that win. Into the next match, another tough lead, Sandslash into Empoleon, and the reason this is a tough lead is because Empoleon wins CMP, and they outpace. So I have to kind of just let this go, and once I survive that, go for the drill run, grab a shield, and once I have gained an advantage in the lead, then come in with the Claydol, because then I feel more comfortable shielding back. But my safe swap of the Claydol ends up luring out a Corviknight. A Corviknight, of course, resisting the Mud Slaps, but we do have Rock Tomb for coverage, and Payback is super effective, but after I've lowered their attack once, is not actually threatening, and they have no ability to farm me down, and even an Air Cutter won't be enough to pick up the knockout from this range, so I will actually just let this go. And now, because the Rock Tomb was thrown on the CMP tie, they basically have to throw some more energy, or else I'm going to get to another charge move. But instead, I'm going to pivot into my Charizard, lure back out the Empoleon, and now I will commit the first shield on the Charizard. And at this point, I'm going to overfarm as much as I can, go for the Blast Burn to pick up the knockout. Is the opponent willing to commit a shield here? No, they are not. They're going to let that go. In the back, it's a Clodsire. Now, Clodsire will be hit with a Blast Burn. Of course, they can respect this with their final shield, but if they do, I will just pivot, looking for the catch. And no, actually, I'm going to stay in this matchup, commit the second shield first, making sure I'm always overfarming, having enough energy for that Corviknight if it comes back in. Here comes Blast Burn number 2. That does massive damage. Looking for the catch, don't quite get it. This forces the opponent to throw their energy regardless. And now that the Earthquake does connect to pick up the knockout on the Claydol, in comes the Sand Slash. It's a race. Shadow Claw versus Sand Attack. The opponent is forced to throw their energy here, but at this point, they will be energy dry, and then it's Dragon Breath versus Sand Attack. Both are actually single resisted, but we get the Dragon Breath farm down. We get the Dragon Breath farm down of the Claydol. Actually, we get to an Air Cutter on 1 HP. But once again, Charizard sweeping an endgame for the win. Into the next match, we've got Sand Slash into Wigglytuff. Now, this is a tough lead because Shadow Claw is double resisted, but the opponent instinctively just pivots right out of that matchup because they see a steal on their fairy. But now here comes an Ice Punch to chip the Corviknight, and the opponent ended up throwing right away, which means this can only be an Air Cutter, so I will just let this go. And now in comes the Claydol. So adjusting my playstyle a little bit, didn't want to come in with the Charizard, and the reason I'm doing that is because Charizard actually resists Charm as well. So even if they did come in with their Wiggly, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But back out, actually, in comes a Empoleon, kind of an interesting swap because they are on Metal Sound. Of course, yes, they have super effective Hydro Cannon, but before they even get to that Hydro Cannon, look at these Mud Slaps go. They're doing so much damage to the Glassy Empoleon, and Rock Tomb from this range will actually grab a shield from the opponent and lower their attack. They can't even get the full farm down, so they're forced to throw energy. Hydro Cannon, of course, will pick up the knockout from this range, but all that does is set up farm for the Sand Slash. Sand Slash will get a healthy farm down, and now back in comes the Corviknight. Corviknight looking for the full farm down. They can't quite get there. This is not enough for a payback, so I will just let this go. It is just a resisted Air Cutter. Now in comes the Wiggly, and Wiggly will be hit with back-to-back Ice Punches, but I imagine after throwing one, I will bank one for later until I grab that final shield. The opponent is going to get outpaced here to I'm getting to the Air Cutter before they get to the Swift. They actually let that go, acknowledging that they need to save shield for that Ice Punch that I have loaded, but that means I can commit the shield here. And then just look for the back-to-back Air Cutters here. Overfarming just a little bit, and if they know they can't shield this, but they end up committing the shield anyways. They do actually outpace by a single turn to pick up the knockout here with the Swift, but that does not matter because we have the Ice Punch loaded on the Sand Slash, and Ice Punch from this range will pick up the knockout on the Wiggly, and we are able to take that win with the Shadow Claw farm down of the Corviknight. But yeah, that is Shadow Charizard. I had so much fun running this Pokemon. It was absurd. I mean, the amount of times I was able to just entirely sweep endgames. You get this thing in a shield advantage or an energy advantage scenario, and it absolutely runs away with the games. Even in the just even one shield scenario, where you have the ability to bait Air Cutter and land Blast Burns and the boosted Dragon Breaths from Air Cutter and the Shadow damage. I mean, it's just so much fun. So I definitely recommend this Pokemon. This team was pretty solid. I would say it's a little bit soft to Empoleon, and you don't really want to be soft to Empoleon in this meta. Of course, if they safe switch Empoleon, that's fine because you have Claydol, and Claydol actually has a very dominant matchup there. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me from this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.